So, I think we assume that everybody is back. I know that Gerhardt is not back because she's teaching in another room. So let's say some more about what I learned during lunch. You know, we always learn a lot during lunch. During lunch, I spoke with the guy from Istanbul who wrote the foreword of this book. And after asking me many questions, finally, he confessed. He confessed that he's an obstetrician. Am I authorized to say that?
You're proud of it.
Yeah. But he's here, so he must be a good one.
Yes.
He will be.
You know, we said this morning, this is a self-selected group.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's valid for everybody. Self-selected group. That's why you are special. That's why we spoke about your duty because you are special. Having said that, where is your pen? Your pen. Ah, you have your pen. You spend half an hour like that with your pen.
I have a pen too. Can I?
We can change it out.
We are curious, you know.
Yeah.
That was the main topic of conversation. What does you want to talk about?
Yeah. Well, it was concerning what we were talking about, because you said a lot of to say damage the syntocin or synthetic oxytocin can do.
Perhaps, probably questions.
Yeah, of course. But okay, saying that that hypothesis is true.
It's confirmed, yes.
If there is a mother who has had that oxytocin infusion synthetically, is there any possibility to try to repair that damage somehow?
Yes.
After the birth,
yes.
Or for example immediately after
yes,
the birth?
It's an important question. We can in fact enlarge, you know. Something you realize when you look at our database, agricultural database, a way to recall that we are human beings, and a way to recall where we are special compared with other mammals. When we talk about the long-term consequences of how we are born, we cannot use any animal model for a very easy to understand reason. When you disturb the birth process of still you, so once more you have to catch up. So the difference between human beings and other mammals is that when you disturb one way or another the birth process among non-human mammals, it's easy to detect immediately the spectacular effect. It's simple. When you disturb the birth process of non-human mammals, the general rule is that the mother is not interested in the baby. It's simple. Whatever the way, it can be used giving birth with an epidural anesthesia. It can be primates giving birth by cesarean section. The effect is always the same. You disturb the hormonal balance of the female giving birth, the mother is not interested in the baby. The baby will survive only if human beings, I play the word, take care of the baby. So it's very simple and easily detected immediately at an individual level. Among humans, it's much more complex than that. So it's a way to realize the importance of your question. We can explain first why it's much more complex than that. Why we cannot easily detect short-term and long-term effect. Because human beings speak, there are sophisticated ways to communicate, so they create cultures. A way to explain that in some situations, such as the birth process, human behavior is less directly under the effect of the hormonal balance and more directly under the effect of the cultural milieu. A way to explain the difference. When a woman is pregnant, because she's a human being, when a woman is pregnant, she knows that she's pregnant. She knows that she will have a baby. She can anticipate a maternal behavior. She can anticipate a maternal behavior. What other mammals cannot do. Other mammals have to wait until the day when they will release a cocktail of love hormones to be interested in the baby. So that's a big difference. That's why when we raise questions like this, your question about human beings, about possible long-term effect of synthetic oxytocin, of cesarean section, of epidural, of anything, it's difficult to detect effect. Epidemiologists need huge numbers. That's the reason for our database, private research database, specialized in such database. But if you look at our database, you see that our database can be presented as a tool to train ourselves to introduce the collective dimension, thinking, not in forgetting individuals. You cannot detect anything at an individual level. You need huge numbers. I gave this morning, let's introduce Ghana under wire. We kept your seat free.
This is the sick entrance.
Oh, good afternoon.
It was a question about long-term consequences of how we are born, and particularly what we know, what we don't know, about drip of synthetic oxytocin, and perhaps is it possible to repair, possible to compensate the damages. That's another question. So I was saying that first it's very difficult to demonstrate the effect. This morning we spoke roughly about autism. I mentioned, by the way, I don't know if you remember, a Swedish study. In this study, the researchers had at their disposal the birth records of all the Swedish population born between 1974 and 1993, 20 years. All the birth records of the Swedish population, 20 years. And they had at their disposal the medical files of all the Swedish subjects who have been diagnosed as autistic with strict criteria. For each of them, 5 controls. All this data in the computers. With this method, they could detect long-term effect, statistically significant effect. But they needed for that the statistical language. So statisticians only talk about risk factors, tendencies, statistical significance. They cannot teach anything about one person in particular. So just to demonstrate that what happened at birth apparently can influence the risk of becoming autism, they needed huge numbers. So that the first comment about your question. Very difficult to relate a state of health to what happened at birth. You can. It's an important lesson for those who might explore our database, because most of you are not epidemiologists. By the way, are there epidemiologists here, by the way? Or statisticians? No. If you explore our database, the first thing you must do is to forget your family and to forget the people you know. You cannot learn anything at an individual level. That's the first thing you have to do. So that's a preliminary comment about your question. We can not demonstrate, in general, very difficult to demonstrate the correlation between, at an individual level. So that's why it's so difficult to answer your question. And people, in particular, never study the possible long-term effect of drip of synthetic oxytocin. The most common medical intervention is not, the effect of this intervention is not studied. So that's why it's difficult to answer your question, because first we have not proved, we don't know exactly to which extent it can have effect. If there are effects, we'll need huge numbers to detect a little something. Perhaps it will be easier when they will have more studies, but transgenerational effects. We are at a stage now in our database where we introduce more and more transgenerational effects, and often they are more significant than effect on the first generation. Because there are Dutch people, we can say some more, I deviate a little bit, about transgenerational effect. I take the example of Holland, because there is nobody from Sweden, because there are also interesting Swedish study. But as you know, and as our Dutch friends know, during the winter 1944-1945, there was a terrible famine. Amsterdam, Rotterdam, there was a terrible starvation, so that it has been possible to try to know what happened to those who were in the womb, in the uterus, during the period of starvation, during this winter 1944-1945. So they could demonstrate these things, demonstrate the risk of. An example is that those who were in the womb during this starvation had an increased risk of becoming obese. It was a risk factor for some sort of obesity. Deprivation during fetal life, followed by life in an affluent society, like the Netherlands after the war, was at the root of some sort of origin of some sort of obesity. There was an increased risk of schizophrenia. So that was a first generation study. But today, and that was interesting, today people are the second generation. And in fact, the results are, to a certain extent, still more significant. To give some details, we can say that women whose grandmother was pregnant during the famine has a lower average birth weight than the rest of the population. Even in their own mother had a normal birth weight. So we are at that stage. So to go back to your question, at the present time we don't have hard data, particularly for drip of synthetic oxytocin, because it has never been studied, so we don't have any data. It's a comparatively new intervention. You know, a drip of synthetic oxytocin only appeared in the 1960s. You must recall that oxytocin had been synthesized in 1955, and the use of plastic in medicine developed only in the 50s and the 60s. Medicine in general. The history of medicine in general is related to the history of plastics. That's changed everything. That's the meaning of my book, Childbirth in the Age of Plastics. When you study the history of childbirth during the second half of the second century, you understand it better if you study at the same time the history of plastics. All human activities have been influenced by the history of plastics. So, just to say that drip of synthetic oxytocin is a comparatively new intervention. But it's also the most common one. But until now, it has not been studied. So we are a little bit in the dark to answer your question. Having said that, if there are here some therapists using regressive therapies, are there such therapists here?
My partner is
Regressive therapies? You are your
my partner. We are working together. She's in another place.
Ah.
She's a psychodramatist, a kind of a song.
Yes. So they claim, but of course we have to trust them, that when they do such therapy, people can re-experience early events, particularly how they are born, and this can have a therapeutic effect. So you heard about these therapies. Historically speaking, the first one is primal therapy, Ushanov. The first book, Primal Scream, was published in 1972. Just to give an idea, that's really a new generation of therapies. After that, there were rebirthing, there were hypnosis, there were adapting therapies originally from India and so on. So now there are many kinds of therapy. So these therapies are supposed to fix, to compensate such damages, you know. But the point is to prove that there is a damage related to what happened at birth. Mm-hmm. And at individual level, it's almost impossible. So we can only have ideas, hypotheses, theories. Easy to make theories, you know that, but not many hard data. But your question was important to realize why we are special, why we are, once more, we are different from other mammals. Among humans, we must think in terms of culture. When you talk about other mammals, it's simple. You disturb the birth, the mother is not interested in the baby. Among humans, we can be inspired by what happened to other mammals. But when human beings are concerned, we must always introduce the word civilization in the question. We have phrased the question in different way. For example, if primates, if mammals don't take care of their baby after giving birth by cesarean section, the question is, when we think of human beings, the question is, but what is the future of a humanity born by cesarean section? Not an important question today, or born without enough hormone in general. And it's a question that now more and more people think of, including in medical circles. Medical circles are, it's easy in medical circles to introduce scientific concept. Doctors, even if they don't have a scientific mind, they understand the scientific language. And I'll just tell you something which is significant. It is that next month, in November, in Paris, there will be a big conference, international conference, and a part of the conference will be about the future of obstetrics and gynecology. And the one in charge of this session is Professor Michael Stark from Berlin, who is the father of the new simplified technique of cesarean section. In fact, those from Israel probably heard about
Dr. Stark.
Michael Stark, because when he was in Israel, that he developed this new technique, which is called, known originally in Israel as the Seit Misgaf Lagatal technique. Seit
Absolutely. משגב לדח.
Yeah, that good techniques that is now in Berlin. You know that today possible to do a C-section in 20 minutes with a average blood loss which is comparable to, we can compare with the average blood loss by birth by vaginal route. And that's the effect of this simplified technique of C-section introduced by Michael Stark, who is now in Berlin. So he's in charge of this session. He asked me to talk at this conference in Paris, Academic Conference for Doctors. And the subject is what is the future of a humanity born by cesarean section? It's an important question. The question must be raised in terms of our species, humanity, all the questions today, not individual, but humanity. What is the future of humanity? You know, it's a necessary question. It's very probable that in 1 or 2 or 3 decades, at least half humanity will be born by C-section. When you look at the graph, you know, the rate of C-section, it's like that. We don't need a long time to be above 50% at a global level. When you think that in big countries like China, big Indian cities, Korea, we might include Turkey, Greece, Iran, and the big Latin American cities, they're already around 50% at national level. So we are going toward a stage where a great part of humanity will be born by C-section. So we have to wonder about what is the future of a civilization born by cesarean section. So to go back, we go back to your question.
I just wanted to know if there is, you have spoken a lot of that we don't know, and what if the damage possibly caused
yes.
by.
Let's prove the damage first, yes?
Yeah, and all these things. But we talk so much about, for example, skin-to-skin contact with
Yes.
the newborn. So my question was actually more like, can that compensate for because that will produce somehow oxytocin, won't it? Yeah?
Yes,
And
we understand your question. We understand your question.
Yeah, and can that compensate for the oxytocin synthetically given in birth?
The point is, when we talk about skin-to-skin contact, critical period during the hour following birth, we talk about the basic need of the newborn baby. And the basic need of a newborn baby is to be in the hand of a mother who is in a special hormonal balance, who is supposed to be in a special hormonal balance. The reason why this period is critical is that mother and baby are in a special hormonal balance that will never occur again. So this period is not critical if the woman didn't give birth by herself.
Okay.
If she gave birth with drugs replacing her synthetic oxytocin or endorphins, it's not critical. If she gave birth by C-section, it's not critical. So just to clarify the question, so is it possible after that? That's a big question that has been raised by many people. For example, for treating autistic children, Mrs. Walsh from New York had developed holding sessions. Holding session, that is to say, the child in the hands of the mother, and the mother saying, "Look at my eyes, look at my eyes," you know, creating a body-to-body contact, eye-to-eye contact, because it seems that one of the important problems of autistic people, they cannot establish an eye-to-eye contact with other people. And perhaps one reason, one factor might be that there have been no eye-to-eye contact between mother and child at birth. But in fact, it has been like that for thousands of years. So it's not probably a way to explain the current situation. Also, even there were societies in Africa, in Benin, where the common belief that the day following birth, the mother should not look at the baby's eyes, because the bad spirits will enter the baby's body. It's one example of belief among thousands, so, recalling that all societies found an excuse to avoid the first contact between mother and newborn baby one way or another. So, so a way to explain some therapies, you know, therapies with eye-to-eye contact, body-to-body contact, trying to repeat, you know, what's happening. But perhaps it works, I don't know. Those who promote this therapy say that it works, but difficult to prove. Yes. Let's listen to the Turkish obstetrician.
So, I am a bit mixed up now, a little bit. I told you in the
That was my objective, to
Yeah.
make you more confused than ever.
So, you suggest from the Chinese study that instead of having synthetic oxytocin, have cesarean. Is that true?
What I say, that they studied 3 groups.
Yes.
One vaginal route without forceps, one vaginal route with forceps or ventouse, and the other one pre-labor C-section on maternal request.
Okay. Without any hormones active.
The use of hormone is not mentioned in the study,
Ah.
as usual. As usual,
But pre-labor elective means no
it's
hormone.
not mentioned. But because I've been in China,
Pre-labour.
Pre-labor,
No,
no
no
hormone.
hormones
Pre-labour.
started.
It means no hormone.
so it means that this, apparently, this is a group in which the fetus has not been exposed to synthetic oxytocin.
Okay.
Because there was a cesarean section before the labor start. There was no other intervention than cesarean section. While from what I know about China, where I've been still last time this year in April, in reality, when women give birth vaginally, it's the same as here in fact. Almost always there is a drip of synthetic oxytocin. So it's probable, although it's not mentioned in the study, it's probable that the only group of children who have not been exposed to synthetic oxytocin during the birth process are those born by elective C-section pre-labor. That's what we can say. And a way to explain that is the best group, the lowest risk of psychopathological problem. Lower risk that among those who are born vaginally without forceps, not obvious. The risk is lower. It is hard data. You know, in China you have to trust the obstetrician, the epidemiologist. You know, it's hard data. You know, with huge numbers.
So many Chinese.
Yes, but in general you have to trust epidemiologists. Many epidemiologists are very humble people. They never conclude that they found something significant. They say, we need further studies, but it seems that, you know, almost always, they are very humble people, no preconceived idea, no theories, it has to be interpreted. I can say that because I've known many epidemiologists, including my own son. We did studies for Institute of Child Health in London. They never said that they found something. They detect correlations, you know, they are very, very humble. So that's why we have to take that into account seriously.
But the zoologists say,
Pardon?
the zoologist,
Zoologist.
yeah, the zoologist.
And that's another discipline, yes.
No, it's very interesting because they gave common accepted definition of espèce en voie de disparition? How do you call that?
But,
Une espèce en voie de disparition.
oh, yes, yes.
How do you say in English?
Yeah.
Yes, yes,
So
let me
that
see.
it's going to this
Species in the process of extinction.
Yes,
Endangered species.
Endangered
Yes,
species.
endangered
Endangered
species is, there's a lot of them, and one important of them is the inability to reproduce without help.
Yes, yes.
So this is to answer your question about what is the future of the humanity
Yes.
born by cesarean.
Yes, that's interesting point. Is that when we raise this question, we need a long time to provide hard data regarding human beings, because our life expectancy is 80 years or something like that. We need several generations, take a long time. But meanwhile, we can be inspired by other species, what happened in other species, you know. And for example, about effect of C-section, there is an interesting species, is the bulldogs. You know about bulldogs? Ah. So, you know that many bulldogs are born by C-section. Bulldogs are comparatively difficult for medical reasons, so veterinary doctors started to develop technique of cesarean section several decades ago for the birth of bulldogs. But the lifespan of a bulldog is very short. I think it's average 7 years. It's very short compared to the lifespan of human beings in 10 times shorter. So to know about transgenerational effect, we don't need many centuries. And at the present time, from a statistic I read recently, the rate of C-section among bulldogs is around 95%. It's already 95%. You know about that, yes? What do you tell us about bulldog? Because apparently
No, I have no special knowledge about bulldogs, but I've heard that they nearly all, they cannot give birth normally. It doesn't work.
now it's about 95%. Is there a veterinary doctor here? Are you a veterinary
No,
doctor?
I used to have a bulldog. He, an English bulldog. He was 11 when he died.
Yes,
And,
it's a
I
shock.
think that it's true that they have difficulties giving birth.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely. But
When
it's
was
all-
it? When was it?
When my bulldog,
Who died or
he
was
died
born?
2.5 years ago.
I just saw a recent
Yeah.
generation.
Yeah. So he's a
So
recent
he was
generation.
11. So he was born at the end of
He
the
was born
20th
by-
century.
Yes.
By C-section.
Yes.
Yes.
But I think also it has to do
Male
with-
bulldog.
He was a male, yes.
Yes.
And he also had a heart condition, but that was
What he
wrong.
had?
He was wrongly diagnosed with a heart condition, but he was a healthy, happy, wonderful dog.
Yes.
They have the best personalities of the world, of course.
Yes, he was your, but of course he was
but-
your dog, so
Yes,
that's
yes.
explanation.
But I think with breeding of dogs, I think it also has a lot to do with money, and the fact that they are afraid of losing very valuable, expensive dogs. So
Yes.
they don't also. They think it's a risk also for the
Yes,
the
yes,
bitch to give birth, even though she may have managed. I think.
But there
it's-
are other species of dogs that are
Yeah.
also very expensive.
Yes, I know. Of course, it is
You
the
know,
shame.
you will
that
always find other reasons.
Yeah.
In China,
Yeah.
one that I want to explain,
Mm.
the rate of cesarean section, which in many parts of China are now above 50%.
Yeah. No, they are
They
obviously
don't
bred
say
to be
that
so.
it's because Chinese women have difficult birth. They say, you know, now with the politics of one child per family, every child is so precious, but a little bit the same.
Mm.
So we do not hesitate to do C-section. So it's a little bit the same. We have always to take into account several factors. That's why epidemiological studies are all epidemiologists are always humble because they know there are always many factors to consider. But it's just to say, you know, I was not thinking that we would talk about bulldogs today. And I'm sure that most of you, when they came this morning, we're not thinking that we might talk about knitting and having bulldogs. But it's what we have done. About Honolulu and the silent meeting session, there is a practical problem.
You don't
That-
find the middle.
No, is that
On the plane, you can't have the needles.
yes,
And again,
can the security accept your
Yes.
because I'm not metal.
yeah, they are metal, but they are also wooden.
There are also wooden, but this one will not be accepted as a security, or you have to put it in a registration bag.
No,
Yeah.
I
Yes.
came here with 2 sets of those and no
Pardon?
problem.
No problem.
No problem at all.
Even with that,
It's loose now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Which you have to email.
you know, how do you know that?
I understand.
How do you know that?
Well, America, I don't believe you can have the metal. I think you can do the wooden, or you put it in your checked bags.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
So, this is a very, very important practical question for organizing the Honolulu conference. How to introduce, to import in the US knitting needles. So, at the end of the day, you'll remember we spoke about knitting needles and bulldogs. Let's go on. Netherlands.
Yes.
So,